Hello, this is Mr. Evans, and this is part 2 of the gears, joints, and motion link video. Make sure you do part 1 first. We're on steps 11, 12, 13, and 14 for this video, and we're going to jump right into it. So step 11 tells me to activate my root component, and mine's already activated, so I'm good. And then next I'm going to go to the assemble menu. We haven't done this very often except for new component. But assemble also has this as-built joint, and you can see the explanation there. But we're going to pick as-built joint, and then we're going to make sure the type says revolute. So look over here in the type. Mine says rigid, so I've got to change that. And the second one down is revolute. Now it says select the large gear and then the large axle. So I need to do them in that order. So the gear, then the axle. Now I can select it either here on the canvas, or I can go over to the browser and select it there. It's going to highlight in the browser anyway, so watch. Here's my large gear, I select it, and then I'm going to select my large axle. So you can see I have 2 components, and now I need a snap point. And it tells me in my notes that the center of the large axle is going to be my snap point. Look at that, you get this little flag that pops up. So there we go. And you can see we get a little bit of motion there. Kind of interesting. I gotta be honest with you, I think the motion will look a lot better if you're looking straight down on it. So let me click on the top view. I don't have this in the notes, but it's not a bad idea to do. And let's go ahead and check out that motion again. We can click preview motion and we'll get to see that once again. There we go. Now we don't want to change any other settings. Everything else is good. But there is our motion. Not very exciting. It's kind of overlapping on top of the other gear, so we're going to have to fix that later. But let's stop that, click OK, or hit return, and let's do the next step. Actually, I'm still on step 11. It says I got to go to my browser, and I got to right-click on Revolute 1. All right, here it is right here. It's in the joints folder. So if you don't see yours, you might have to open the joints folder. So there's Revolute 1. So I'm going to right click on it, and then I'm going to rename. It highlights it, and we're going to call that large joint, and then hit return. All right, now I am done with step 11. Again, we are in the browser. We just renamed our Revolute 1 to large joint. Step 12. Well, step 12 tells me to repeat step 11, except we're going to use the small gear and the small axle. So let's do that. Let's go ahead and go to assemble. By the way, my root component is selected. That was the first part of it, so it's already good. And then I'm going to go to assemble, as-built joint. And then make sure the type says revolute. It already does. It remembered it from last time. And then we're going to click the small gear first, because that's the order that we were told with the large gear. So small gear, then the small axle. And remember, we get this snap select that pops up, and we want to go right to the center. We want that flag to be right there, and we click, and there we have some movement on our smaller gear. Again, it overlaps on top of the other gears, so it doesn't really look like the gears are working together, so we probably have some more steps to do. But before we go on to the next step, we have to finish this step. And if you remember, I clicked OK, by the way. If you remember, we came over here and we renamed Revolute 1 to large joint, so it's time to rename Revolute 2. Now, it would make sense, even though it doesn't say it exactly in our notes, it does say we're doing the small gear. So instead of large joint, let's go ahead and put in small joint. And again, that's over here in the browser. And we right-clicked on it, selected rename, and then typed in small joint. And I'll hit return. We are ready to move on to step 13. Step 13 says we're going to go back to assemble. Doesn't say anything about activating components, so I think we're good. It says go back to assemble, and it says go to motion link. Now, there's lots of little steps here, so I'm going to take this nice and slow. It says I'm going to select the large joint, and it tells me in the browser. So unfortunately, look at this. It already tells me one of my joints is selected. So I'm actually going to escape on this. I'm going to back up. And I'm kind of glad I made that mistake because sometimes, we make these mistakes and we get lost. I just hit escape. And escape is a great tool for you to make sure it deselects things. For example, my small joint was selected, and when I hit escape, it unselects it, which is what I really want. Because when I go to assemble and go to motion link, I don't want anything selected yet until I select the large joint. So now I'm going to go to the browser, select the large joint first, and then it says to select the small joint. So I am going to select it, but after I select the large joint. So there we go. And look at this. We've got both our gears moving, but they still don't really look like they're working together quite yet. So we've got to change some things. We're going to go to the large joint, and there it is right over here in our dialog box. And we're going to make sure it says rotate Z, which it does. And we're going to change the angle to 12. All right, so that changes things a little bit with our large joint. And still doesn't look good yet, so let's see what happens here. And we're going to go to our small joint, and we're going to say 36. And I'm sure you've figured out by now that those numbers are related to the number of teeth in this design. But notice we're kind of doing it backwards. For example, for the large joint, we're making the angle 12, and the small joint, we're going to make it 36. That's just the way this works. And we're going to kind of learn more about gears later on. Just go ahead and put the settings in the way we are supposed to, and let's finish the rest of this. So we got to click the reverse box because it tells me to in my notes. And wow, there we go. Now it looks like these gears are moving together. And I do want you to realize that if you notice, this is moving around and then it kind of starts back again at the beginning in this preview mode. That's okay. That's the way that we want it set up. So we can click animate if it already isn't on, so we can turn it off and it kind of resets back to the beginning, and then we can animate it. And so you can see it spinning around. All right, it says hit the return key, so let's do it. And you're pretty much done, except step 14 wants you to click drag on either gear. Let's see what that means. So if I click drag, oh, there we go. So we can actually turn these gears on our own. Kind of neat. So if I want to click drag on the small gear, I can do that. If I want to click drag on the large gear, I can do that. I can even go into my home view and do that as well. And notice that little circle can help us a little bit to figure out how many times this gear is spinning around. Now for today, we're just designing these gears. There will be a future use where we go back into here and talk about why they move the way they do. But I'll give you a little hint, little preview. It has something to do with, let's see if we spin this large gear around one time. Notice my small gear already spun around fully once, and I'm not even all the way around on my large gear. So that spun around once, twice, and 3 times. So my small gear spun around 3 times for every 1 time I turn around the big gear. And again, we'll get into that later. That's going to be called a gear ratio. Okay, but that's it. I just wanted to show you how to turn this in because I want to grade this. Now, unfortunately, I won't be able to see the motion when you turn it in because it's going to be a screenshot, but I will teach you a way to show me the motion later. Let's just do the regular screenshot here. So I go to my multiple views. I want to see the top view. And I need to see those flags. That's how I'm going to know you have the motion link connected there. Let's get the home view here. We might zoom in a little bit. Let's do the front view. That's a nice one. And then instead of the side view or right or left, that's not really that great. Let's go ahead and do a bottom angle. Kind of like that. We've been doing that a lot lately. And again, make sure you zoom in on each of your parts so I can see really clearly and give you the best grade that you deserve. I need to see your timeline down here. That's how I'm going to check things out and see that things are correct. And then I also need to see your browser. And I need to be able to see the joints and the motion length. So make sure your joints folder is not closed. And you might want to start opening some folders for me from now on. When I'm looking at your designs, I need to see that your browser is correct. So try to open it as much as possible without making some parts of it disappear. But that looks good. All that's left is for you to highlight your profile name and do the Shift Command 3 and do your screenshot. You can see mine appearing right here on the bottom. And then you can go ahead and submit this to the correct assignment in Schoology. Now remember, this is the 3612 gear train. Once you're comfortable with this, if you want to build this again, if you feel like you didn't do, it was hard, you didn't do so well, you could always build this one again. But once you're done with this one, there's 2 more gear trains to build with different gear ratios. Give them a try. Good luck. Hope you enjoyed this one. And if you have any questions, go ahead and shoot me an email. If you're struggling with something, maybe I can point you in the right direction. But otherwise, good luck and do a good job.